So for anyone such as myself, who's been a long-term fan of the Fighter and the Kid podcast, and all the sort of podcasts within that remit, Chris D'Elia, Bobby Kelly, sort of Bert Kreischer, that kind of thing, and Joe Rogan, you'll know about the Bryan Callen situation. You'll know that he's no longer with the podcast, that Brendan's basically now hosting the show in partnership with Josh Wolf, and occasionally I'll have some of the guests on there, but for the most part it's just him and Josh Wolf and a few of the guests, and no mention of Callen at all since his departure. No one really cares, no one's mentioned it. It's the elephant in the room. I've been looking at their Instagram, they've lost followers because of it. It's all people are talking about in the comments. It's all anyone wants back for that show, right, is what's going on with Bryan Callen. He's now working with Sam Tripoli, which isn't really going as well as he'd have thought it would. And he's now doing this book club thing. The issue I have with the Fighter and the Kid is you can't be the Fighter and the Kid without the kid. It was set up because it was Bryan and Brendan, who, by the way, Bryan did find Brendan and gave him that platform and gave him that audience to begin with. It's all anyone is talking about is the fact that where is Bryan? Why not just change the name of the show? I don't even have an issue necessarily with the show continuing, but like, I'm personally not going to be listening to it in the future. You know, I've only recently unfollowed them on social media, but I just wish it would be continue with something else. You know, if that chapter's closed and you're going to draw a line under it and say, okay, it is what it is, Bryan's got to deal with his thing, we've been dropped by the promoters or the sponsors, Cast Media I think it is, let's leave it there and let's have a new thing instead of something and the something. You know, Brendan's got this thing about King and the Sting, Fighter and the Rinks, Fighter and the Kid. Make something new, have your own thing. I can tell you now from what I'm seeing just as a general fan, and I know that Brendan likes to play this up as, oh, you know, these guys are sitting in their mum's basements with, you know, Cheeto things. This is coming from a general fan, and I think represents most of the general fans of that podcast. It's not the same. It's not the same. You know, it's lost something. Something has been lost with the dynamic and the chemistry between the two co-hosts, and it just doesn't work. Not in my opinion. At the minute, it's almost like the elephant in the room because Brendan's refusing to acknowledge it. No one on the set's talking about it, and Bryan can't really seem to hit the ground running, and I feel really sorry for him because he's had 3 or 4 attempts now at just trying to get back on the ladder and trying to do something, and doesn't really seem to understand that whether he accepts it or not, he is a victim of cancel culture. Effectively, they've kind of shut down his main means of making money. He doesn't have his show anymore, and he's going to struggle in that aspect. Well, some people may have the opinion, okay, Bryan did the same thing first. He threw Chris under the bus. He didn't stand by his friends. Bryan's basically emulating that same thing, you know, the same thing he did with Chris. Doesn't mention his name, doesn't talk about him. And what it shows really is just how much of the Hollywood mentality creeps into almost every part of Hollywood, not just films, not just TV programs, the podcasting industry, industries that you think could be self-filtered, have their own spin on things, actually are quite closely controlled. And Joe Rogan's experiencing the same thing now. From Spotify, someone who had prided himself on being able to say what he wanted to say and do what he wanted to do, and didn't really go by anyone. I know YouTube would get involved here and there, and they have the right to demonetize and strike, and possibly that was a reason going to Spotify, because the general thinking was, well, he's going to be able to do what he wants, the money's going to be his own, it's this huge deal, it's going to be exclusively on there. But no one's above it. There's no company that is above the cancel culture right now and taking action and making strikes against media in whatever form that would be.